Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
3, 2, 1, and we are back, and this is day 2 of your top 10 real estate lead and business models rated. So what we're doing this week, and yesterday was obviously day 1, this being day 2, that should be obvious, is we're going through and rating and reviewing and comparing and contrasting all the top 10 most common real estate business models. Without going into a long, breathy explanation, really at the end of the day, you guys are all going to migrate towards 1 or 2 or 3 different lead generation models, and we want you to choose wisely. And we also want you to consider the fact that the best real estate agents we've ever coached, the ones making the most money, selling the most houses, that have been in the business for the longest periods of time, they've worked their businesses up to the point where they have 5 to 7 proven lead generation models, or lead generation as we refer to it, spokes. And if you don't know what a spoke is, a quick review: spokes on the wheel. A bicycle wheel with 5 to 7 spokes is obviously going to have more strength and integrity than say a wheel with 1 spoke. And we want you to work towards having 5 to 7 spokes and choose wisely. And choose which ones you're going to put on the wheel first, because if you choose one that's fragile, you're going to soon discover as you're rolling down the road that guess what? Your wheel was built with frankly fragile spokes.
That's right. And we realize that it can be very difficult for you to navigate through your own decision tree on this. So we're going to help you figure out all of the good, the bad, and the ugly of each one of these spokes. We're going to consider things like the cost in terms of time and money, and sometimes both, the level of skill required and how hard that skill might be to get. Maybe some of these require less or more skill. Is it passive or is it active? How efficient is it? In other words, how long is it going to take for you to get results from this? So we're going to apply all of those things to each of these different sources, or as we call them, spokes. Yesterday, we talked about geographic farming. We talked about probate attorneys and divorce attorneys. And I think today you wanted to talk about NOD, which stands for Notice of Default, as well as distressed property, which encompasses short sales and REOs as well.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Now, again, Julie just said it, but I'm going to repeat it. Some of you, frankly, if you've been in the business for 15 years or less, you've never really had to worry about notice of defaults or distressed real estate. And you've been very lucky for that. Let me tell you, Julie and I have been in business for 25 years. Yeah. And especially during the last housing crash, 07 through 09, everything was notice of defaults and distressed. And it was just awful. It just was. Now, it wasn't awful for the agents who were actually listing the REOs, who actually knew how to do short sales. It wasn't awful for the agents that had the skill set to actually get the homes sold in that market because of that market. So notice of defaults and distressed. How do you know? What are the pluses and the minuses? The pluses and the minuses are simple. You have incredibly motivated sellers when it comes to distressed real estate. If it's a short sale, that seller's very motivated. If it's an REO property, real estate owned, right, by a bank, that's incredibly motivated. That's an incredibly motivated seller. Those relationships, generally speaking, are very transactional, and with the exception of maybe some short sale listings that you might stumble across, the short sales are sometimes highly emotional, whereas REOs are low emotion. But it really, at the end of the day, you're dealing with the very best, the most motivated seller you can possibly ever have. It's somebody that has no choice other than just to sell the property.
The quintessential have-to-sell seller, as our Harris Certified coaches call them. There's a big difference between a want-to-sell seller, maybe aspirationally priced. Well, we'll sell if we can get our price in this special circumstance, versus in this category of distressed short sale REO and notice of default, we have to sell. And that could be the bank, as you said, or it could be the actual homeowner. One way or the other, keeping the home is not an option. And what does that mean to you as a listing agent? It means you're going to have a realistic price, a realistic time frame. And the other thing that I like about this, remember, we promised to give them the good, the bad, and the ugly.
That's right.
The other thing is this tends to be a full commission transaction.
Yep.
So that's good. And in many cases, once you've established how you're going to work the system, you tend to have less competition. You might on a short sale, but once you have a bank relationship, you are the go-to person for as long as you're doing a killer job for that asset manager or that bank.
Back in '07, we started teaching agents how to do short sales. And in '08, we started teaching agents how to work directly with the banks to get REOs. We worked with the FDIC. We worked with all the major servicers, Bank of America, Wells Fargo.
SunTrust was huge then.
Yeah, we did all these direct, we were working directly with the lenders, the servicers is what they really were, to find agents to list the properties. And then what happened is the market, two things happened. The market became, here's this word again, oversaturated, too many people chasing the same opportunity. And then the banks started basically, frankly, cutting commissions in a lot of cases. But the other thing that happened, especially with some of the biggest REO relationships, these would be with Fannie and Freddie and things like that, is those Fannie and Freddie would put out, I think it was every 12 or 24 months, they'd put out for bid the contract to be the listing agent in maybe LA or maybe all of California for those assets. And yeah, there are some agents that we were coaching that became the most dominant agents in the United States because they had all the REO listings. Matter of fact, a friend of ours, Leo Pajara, who now works at eXp Realty, was, I believe at Keller Williams, was the #1 agent in Keller Williams, like globally. And if I remember correctly, it was because of his REO relationships.
Yeah, I mean, it was, you talk about lead flow for a while there. That was just spectacular. You talk about having listing inventory yourself. These REO and short sale agents, they didn't just have their active listings. They also had a steady pipeline of coming soon listings. And that was, really a fantastic spoke for, what would you say, maybe 2.5, 3.5 years until it became oversaturated. Some of the rules changed. Again, what works for you today can change on you. And this is another reason to have multiple spokes.
Well, so that's the plus. Now we're going to give you the minus. Why else did it change other than oversaturated? Essentially the government started to step in and started to, well, I can't say stop foreclosures, but they certainly stopped foreclosures,
well,
right?
There was the era of the loan modification for a while.
Loan
that
modification.
Was 2 or 3 years.
Short sales started to become more prevalent. And then what happened is that the whole thing started to completely change. Like you think when there's, and a lot of people now, if you've not been in the real estate business for a long period of time, I know there are people out there trying to sell you short sale designations and short sale this and the other things, and are trying to let you know there's going to be all this distressed real estate coming. So now we're going to pivot to the negative side. And here it is. There is no big sea change happening with real estate values. Thus, there will not be a huge opportunity in distressed real estate. Julie has all kinds of numbers, hopefully memorized.
Yes. Well, so consider the fact that you cannot be a distressed homeowner, distressed meaning you're upside down, you owe more than your home is worth, if you don't owe anything on your home. 50% of home owners in the United States do not have any mortgage, thus they cannot actually be distressed.
Now, you can be a distressed homeowner in the sense that you're not making payments and have equity in your house and actually go into default, thus a notice of default. So you might want to look for this, right? In your marketplace, there are always going to be notice of defaults, and especially after the last 3 years, notice of defaults, almost all of them are going to have a lot of equity in their properties. So you're going to be able to call that notice of default, or in some cases mail them or knock on their door, and you're going to offer them the opportunity to have a graceful exit out of the house, and they're going to be able to sell the house. You're going to be able to give them a check, because what happens ultimately if the house goes through the whole foreclosure process, all of the fees, all of the, really their
piles on.
Their equity basically is depleted faster than you can possibly imagine, because the banks pile on fees, the attorneys pile on fees. The process is very expensive, and in some cases, whatever equity the seller would have had they sold the house with you prior to it going into foreclosure, they have lost it all basically because of the process.
And meanwhile, their credit is wrecked as well.
So we teach you how to explain all this to a prospective notice of default seller in your particular market. But here's the ultimate problem. Now pay attention to what I'm about to tell you guys. So now I'm going to round the numbers up, and I'm not going to give you exact numbers because frankly, I don't have them memorized. Julie probably does, but here it is. So of all the homes in the United States, 50% of them are owned outright. Of the other 50% that have loans on them, that have mortgages on them, most, if not all of those loans, and the only loans mortgages this is not relevant for, are the ones that were taken out in the first half of 2022, right? And frankly, up to this point when rates went up. So everyone prior to that has a low interest rate mortgage of at least 3.5%. But even if you had a higher rate mortgage, you're going to have inflation, which will have increased the value of your home, meaning that you have equity in your house. So your worst case scenario is you put 10% down, you bought the first half of 2022, the values dropped a little bit in your particular market. I'm thinking about you, San Francisco, and all these other things. And you might be even with what the house is. You owe what the house is worth. Well, wait a year, you'll be fine. Mm-hmm. But here's the real punchline where there's not going to be a big opportunity with distressed real estate, because of the homes with a mortgage that, remember, 50% are owned outright. The other 50% have on average a 50% equity in the properties.
Yes, that's right. So the possibility of actually owing more than your home is worth, that will only have happened if somebody just very recently refinanced and pulled a whole bunch of equity out. And even then, all you have to do is wait, 6 months, and they're already not upside down anymore.
Now, the people that are trying to sell you into the belief that there's a big sea change happening, there's going to be a lot of distressed real estate.
They're calling it a forbearance crisis.
They didn't sell real estate they're either, I don't know, I mean, I'm wanting to bite my tongue and not use the actual words I'm thinking. But the reality of it is they either don't know that they're telling you something that's not true, or they're doing it intentionally. But here's really the punchline. There will not be the only thing that would make us wrong. The only thing that would make us wrong is if there was an enormous increase in unemployment. That's it. And then if that were to happen and a whole bunch of homes were to come for sale, then you'd see potentially people racing for the exits, and you could see a distressed market in a very small environment. So if you're living in some sort of, isolated rural type community where they're making widgets, and all of a sudden the widget company is relocated to a different part of the world, and there's a whole bunch of homeowners there, and Julie and I experienced this when we were selling real estate, you're going to see that particular market become depressed, and there's going to be, distressed real estate in that area where maybe, 15 minutes away, there is no distressed real estate.
Little micro pockets. But even then, remember, the banks are probably going to be willing to give you a forbearance for at least 6 months, maybe 12 months, maybe even 18 months for you to get your act back together, either sell the house, relocate, get another job, get a second job, your spouse gets a job. That's very, very different. All of these factors. So I think what you were trying to avoid sounding direct about was that if somebody says and hangs their hat on this, forbearances are going to crash, and, the housing market's going to hit the fan because the prices went up, they are ignorant of the statistics. That's what I would say. They're ignorant of the facts.
They're either ignorant, or they're choosing not to tell you the truth for the sake of trying to sell you their widget.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Because the circumstances are very different. Credit is very high. Equity is very high. Interest rates were very low. Employment, it's not hard to go out and get a job right now. So if that were to happen and we have a massive amount of unemployment, the banks are going to step in, the government's going to have programs, and the possibility of it all just hitting the fan one day, like it really did back in 2007 and 8, none of those factors are actually at play right now. So here's the punchline to this. Yes, notice of defaults can happen because somebody can lose their job, stop making their payment, even if the house is paid off. That is in your market. At a small percentage, that can happen.
She misspoke slightly. Notice default can happen if your house is paid off, but you can roll into a property tax situation.
Right.
But you guys
or
understood.
other liens. There's tax liens.
Right.
There's
So
like
even
that.
in a really strong seller's market, you're still going to see the occasional notice default or the occasional foreclosure, right?
But very occasional.
It is such a tiny. Julie? What percent of all mortgages are in default?
We're actually at an all-time low, and I check this just about every 30 days. It is less than 1% of mortgages in the United States. So you have a decision to make. You can go after the 99% who are not in default, or, I do think there is a place for this, Tim. You can scan for these. Maybe you work 4 or 5 different zip codes and you look at foreclosures.com. You have systems that will tell you this. And now and then, maybe to supplement your listing inventory or to find a particular type of home for your buyer that might not be in the MLS yet, I think that there's a place for that to just supplement and have the skill to be able to help somebody like that. However, I don't think that you should count on this as being a really strong lead flow unless you're in one of those circumstances like, you've got a town or a building or something like that. But that's so unusual.
And guess what? If this was 2007, 2008, and you guys were asking us which to focus on first, we would be telling you short sales. We'd be telling you notice of defaults. We'd be telling you REOs. That's what we'd be telling you to do.
100%.
But we're not telling you now. Now, if, again, there's some sort of, black swan event, And there have been quite a few black swan events in the last, 15 years. But if there is one, and there will be isolated pockets of where there will be legitimately distressed real estate, we will tell you how to do it. We will tell you the latest and the greatest systems on how to do it. We will tell you how to work directly with the banks. We're not focusing on that right now because it's not a really, frankly, a viable opportunity. But there are the pluses and the minuses of having notice of default and distressed as a lead generation spoke for you today. 6 months from now, 12 months from now, maybe a different story, but it's not very viable today. Next spoke. Now, this next spoke we really like, and I'll tell you the reason we really like it is because so many people don't understand how to make the most of it. And again, if you're choosing for a next spoke to put, essentially to build your lead generation wheel, open houses.
Yes, and we just absolutely love open houses, as do the coaches. Why? Because we coach you to do an open house system. Now, there's a very distinct difference between what some agents will say, well, I tried an open house. I sat an open house. That drives me crazy. I sat an open house. Okay, so that means you did absolutely nothing. So you didn't get any results. Versus having a systematic approach. We have a multi-stage approach that will give you absolutely predictable, duplicatable, not just buyer leads, but also listing leads. And the more expensive home, so one of the points that the coaches drive home is the house you choose is really important. The more expensive it is and the easier it is to access, popular neighborhoods, the more likely it is that your open house attendees will not just be looking to buy in that neighborhood, but also come to you with a listing to sell in the neighborhood that moves up or moves in. So this, our coaching clients report all the time that when they follow the system isn't hard to learn and it's not expensive.
It's low skill. Open
Yes.
houses are low skill. Open houses are free. And open houses also are going to get you in front of, usually, believe it or not, the best buyers, but we want you focusing on sellers. But remember, depending on the price point,
Yes.
a lot of the people walking in, presenting themselves as buyers actually have a home to sell. So you're going to be, when we always suggest, if you, in every marketplace, imagine there's a first-time home buyer price range, there's a place, move-up price range, and then there's it's called a luxury price range. And I realize in many markets, there's like maybe 3 or 4 different price ranges above that, but just for the sake of explanation, hold open houses that are in that middle segment, because then you're going to get the move up, you're going to give up the move up buyer who then has a property to sell. And you also might get somebody that's in a, quote unquote luxury or higher end home, more expensive house, right? Downsizing to that mid-range home. So you're going to most likely pick up multiple transactions. But here's the thing that's nice about open houses. Unlike, say, for example, some of the other lead sources we're going to tell you about, open houses, again, generally speaking, are going to get you the best quality leads. I know that sounds strange. Tim, how can that possibly be true? These are just, Bob and Susan driving by on their way to Walmart. Well, there's quite a few looky-loos. You're going to get a lot of that for sure.
Sure.
But what happens is people start their searches online with internet leads. Generally speaking, nowadays, like back, some of you have been in the business for as long as we have, decades ago, it would be newspapers. It would be things that would be home magazines and things like that. And I know a lot of the country still has home magazines, which is funny. Right. So yeah, you're going to start your search there, and then you're going to then focus in on a particular city, then maybe a particular neighborhood, then
School district maybe.
Exactly. So what happens is that people will sift and sort, and they'll drill down even more and more and more until they decide what particular little geographic area they want to live. And then maybe they're even going to decide what neighborhood, and then maybe they're going to decide what streets. So the people driving the neighborhoods, again, are going to be the most motivated type of potential leads for you, whereas the internet leads that you guys pay such extraordinary amounts of money for, which we'll talk about again here probably in a second, maybe today or tomorrow, as a lead generation spoke, those are the least motivated. Sort of like, again, for those of you who've been in the business forever, or maybe you've seen one of these Homes magazines, when you're standing at line at the grocery store and you grab a Homes magazine and you throw it in the bag, you're not even remotely interested in buying or selling real estate. You're just it's real estate porn, basically.
You didn't go there to look at real estate. You went there to buy groceries, right? So you have to follow the intention. When somebody intentionally goes to an open house in the particular neighborhood that they would love to live in, they are intentionally wanting to have a real estate conversation. Now, there is a certain percentage that, they're just house connoisseurs. They're looking for decorating ideas. But that's not all of them. And if you have held opens before and you either have not gotten anybody to attend or you have not gotten good results, it's because you're missing key parts of the open house system.
Yep.
Such as, and I'm not going to go through all of them, that's what coaching is for, such as following up on the same evening using an open house follow-up script instead of sitting on those leads or assuming, well, they'll just call me if they're ready.
That right there is the biggest sin, right? Whether you guys become coaching clients or not, remember Julie just told you that. Absolutely, positively, call those people back. Julie says the evening, but you got to call every single person back. Of course, you're going to need to know how to get their phone numbers and their names, which we teach you to do in the system. But this is what most of you are taught to do. Put them in a CRM and drip on them.
Drip.
No, do not drip on them. I'm going to give you guys a little, we actually should add a spoke. I'm going to do a spoke.
Okay.
I just thought of another one.
Sure.
Okay, so there it is. That's open houses. Big advocates of them. What's the downside of doing open houses? I can't think of one.
I mean, you're going to spend some time, but I wouldn't even call that a downside because, again, we have an example of, we were talking yesterday about one contact, multiple opportunities with the attorneys. Well, this is one event, your open house for 2 or 3 hours. Multiple opportunities, you're going to meet lots of people. And the other reason we like this as coaches is because it builds your skill. You get used to actually talking to people, having real estate conversations, using your lead follow-up scripts, using your pre-qualification scripts. So I don't think there is a downside. I guess if you chose the wrong house, you tried to hold something open that was up a hill with a twisty road behind a gate where you had to talk to the HOA president on a sunny afternoon.
There's a bunch of mean dogs.
And there were Rottweilers in the front lawn and, maybe, but that was on you for picking the wrong house. So aside from those simple mistakes that we cure you of in coaching, I really don't see that there's a downside. And, you and I did countless transactions from open houses. Our coaches certainly have. That's why they are qualified to coach you on this. And certainly our coaching clients are really, really good at this.
I love open houses because it puts agents in direct contact, belly to belly, voice to voice with humans. And
Yes.
I love it because it's good for a new agent. It's good for a seasoned veteran agent.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a super high-end luxury agent and you're saying, Tim, I'm too high employed to do open houses. I'm
Right.
too busy. Sunday's my day for tennis or golf. Well, then that's fine because guess what? You're going to have some other agent that's going to come to your market that's going to start doing open houses and get those potential leads and get those potential relationships. Sellers love to see agents making an effort, especially in a market like this. Some of you have become complacent, lazy, arrogant even, believing that the business is just going to come to you because it always has. Now the market's changed. Now sellers are going to become more particular. And if they see somebody in your particular area, I'm speaking to you, high-end agent, and they're hustling, they're doing the opens, they're following our system. They're doing a neighbors only open prior. They're doing
They're following the system.
They're following the system.
Yeah.
That seller, all the sellers that agent comes in contact with is going to remember that, it's Sunday and here's this agent working their ass off to obviously try to sell their neighbor's house. Trust me when I tell you, in a transitioning market like what we are in, this is when the most disruption actually happens because there's certain agents that are willing to change, willing to do what others aren't willing to do. There's so much technological, everyone talks about, the new chat AI and all these different technologies that are basically going to become very prolific in the marketplace in the forms of all business. Your disruptive technology is always going to be your willingness to have direct face-to-face contact and conversations with other humans. That is what's going to give you the competitive advantage because the other ideas everyone's going to rush to because their perception that these other ideas are easy and more passive. So there it is. Open houses are big advocates of that. Julie, let's do one more.
Okay, you choose.
For today. So there's another potential spoke, and I don't think you and I came up with any other than if you choose the wrong house.
Right.
We think, yeah. So by the way, open house system, we talked about that a bunch of times. Obviously, you guys get that when you join Premier Coaching. Just text the word Premier to 47372 or go to premiercoaching.com. Text the word Premier to 47372 or go to, premiercoaching.com. Remember, in texting, message and data rates may apply. You can join completely for free, no delay. Okay, now I want to talk about another one that wasn't on our list.
Are you talking about dripping?
I'm talking about dripping.
Okay.
Now listen, I am
Gross.
going to be 53 this year, and let me tell you, I do not want to drip.
No, dripping is not generally a
dripping,
good thing.
Dripping is something that is a side effect of potentially taking some sort of drug. It's one of those small print things.
Or perhaps you should be taking some kind of drug.
Hopefully,
That's
you guys are
dripping from your
saying ew and laughing along
Gross.
with us. Okay, so here's the reality. CRMs, dripping, building big databases, and building funnels and all of that type of thing. Now, we're going to really drill it on this.
Well, let's explain it a little bit more.
So you generate a lead, and let's say you generate it from your open house. Let's say you generate it from pay-per-click. Let's say you generate it from, AdWords. You generate it from YouTube. You generate some sort of lead. The lead then gets entered into your CRM. Your CRM is then going to drip on them, send them, it could be videos, it could be textual emails, it could be hopefully not SMSs unless you're doing it
Maybe a
legally.
newsletter, maybe.
Right. So you're going to start sending them in almost always a digital format content. We talked yesterday about geographic farming and things like that. Some of you have used geographic farming at really with great results because what you did is you mailed, say, for example, not a postcard, but a newsletter. Again, in certain markets that works really well. But when it comes to CRMs and drip campaigns, I'll give you the punchline. There has been tons of research, not done by Julie and I. We only know anecdotal research from what our coaching clients have told us, but from what other people have researched, long-term drip campaigns have an incredibly low probability of success, less than 1%. And the problem is a lot of you are being told the second you get your license, buy a CRM. Well, that's expensive. Then you're being told to spend a lot of time tweaking your CRM and getting the CRM to work. And then what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to cram as many leads into that CRM as possible, get your drip campaigns dripping on them endlessly, and then occasionally one of them they're going to raise their hand and say, yes, I'd like to do a real estate transaction. I want you to be very clear. Conceptually, I love that idea.
It's
Don't
passive.
you?
And it's, other than buying this, doing your CRM spend, it's not super expensive. It's definitely passive. You're absolutely not going to get any rejection from it. You just have to wait.
Yeah. Okay. So let's run both sides of it. It is passive. You can set up the system to generate dozens, if not thousands, of leads that go into your drip campaign. Statistically, numerically speaking, a certain percent of those people are going to want to do a real estate transaction, and a certain percent of those people are going to respond to one of your drip campaigns, and they are going to possibly do a real estate transaction with you. All those things are true. And again, a nice thing about a drip campaign is that it is something that you can mostly set and forget. Once you've got good lead capture pages and funnels put in place, once you get all those feeding correctly to a CRM, yes, hypothetically, that's really going to work. You guys with me so far? So we see the attributes of it, but here's the downside. And we already kind of gave you the punchline. All the research has been done years ago and shown that long-term drip campaigns don't really work. But here's really the downside of it. In real estate in particular, because we haven't studied many other industries to know whether drip campaigns would work in other industries. I can't see how they would if they don't in real estate, but just, here's the downside. That buyer or that seller, that agent, that person that's in your drip campaign, they are not just in your drip campaign, they're in many other drip campaigns. Right? And what makes you think that they're going to even open, read, or even,
Or even receive.
Some of you are saying, well, Tim, I can log into my CRM and I can see who opened it. I can read it, who viewed it, how much time they spent on it. Call them.
Right.
Call them. Stop looking and being proud of yourself because you think that person, I'm looking at this person and they're spending more and more time looking at the new listings I'm sending to them. Why the hell haven't you called them?
Yeah, that's not a contact. Looking at it is not a contact.
What you're actually doing is you're providing potential houses for a buyer to buy, and that buyer is working with another realtor.
If they're even qualified.
Exactly. And this is something you guys have to move past.
And also, because you didn't call them, you don't know if they have a house to sell. So you're not just missing out on one potential transaction, it's at least two.
Now, notice with these long-term drip campaigns, the overarching problem is it breeds complacency, because what happens is you will actually feel a false sense of security having a large database that you're dripping on. Some of you with your cups of coffee in between going to Facebook pages will sit there and study endlessly all the analytics of your drip campaigns, and you will then start to feel confident that there's going to be enough people that are going to brew up and do a transaction with you. But you have not actually thought about this. You aren't calling them, you aren't having direct conversations with them, but they're also in many other people's drip campaigns. And this is the fallacy of that business model.
Now, we know that you'll still do it because
we do.
All of you do. And that's why we're sort of trying to lift the fog from how you're thinking about it. So I coach our elite clients like this, the coaches do. If you are going to do this, because we know that you will, and it's not that we don't want you to have a database and that we don't want you to be systematically sending things out and supplementing what you should be doing actively with this. However, here's the rule. When somebody responds to whatever you sent them digitally, maybe it was a newsletter, a market report, it could be anything, a recipe, whatever you're sending to them that you're dripping on them, you have to call them. Don't just shoot them back another email or another text saying, oh, it's nice to hear from you. You have to call them and have real conversations using a real, easy to learn, but effective script.
I'm going to share with you guys a philosophy. The most successful agents we've ever coached have the fewest number of leads.
This is true.
I want you to think about this. And this isn't true in all sales. I've read, Julie and I consume sales books all the time, right? The goal is not to have a crap ton of leads. The goal is to have very, very, very few leads, but those are incredibly motivated leads. And if you're just putting people in a drip campaign, I promise you, for every 100 that you put in there, there are probably 2 or 3 that are rockstar leads, but you aren't working with them because you're dripping on them and you're not calling them, and you think your drip campaign is going to be so compelling that they're going to want to do business with you. Your job when you get a new lead is to call that lead, call the lead, and then you're to pre-qualify the lead. You're to go ask them tough questions that will result in them either deciding to work with you, setting an appointment with you, or you're going to determine that they're not motivated enough to want to work with you, and you're going to throw the fish back into the water, right? You are not going to try to make an unmotivated person into a motivated person. You're not going to try to drip on them.
There's no script for that, by the way.
There is no script for that, right? So your job is to go through leads quickly, ask them questions to qualify them for financial ability and for the motivation, and then to set an appointment. It is not to get gobs and gobs of thousands and thousands of leads.
Well, see, that's part of the problem is that they think of them as leads, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the strategy is not, as you said, our most successful coaching clients don't have oodles and oodles of leads. They have pure leads, smaller lists of people they're actually working with. So part of this, and this is, again, why we have coaching, is to define what a lead actually is. Most of your database is just a contact. It's just a number. Do they think of themselves as a real estate lead? Or did you just run into them at Starbucks, copy down the information and stuff them into your CRM, hoping that someday they're going to do business with you? If they don't think of themselves as a lead, you shouldn't be calling them a lead.
Do you guys understanding what we're focusing on here? There is a place for all of this stuff. And we do know you're going to do it. Most of you join real estate brokerages and they give you a CRM. Well, if they're going to give you one, you don't have to pay for it. You might as well use it, right? Mm-hmm. Just do not believe that it's actually going to generate business for you, because statistically, the numbers are so damn tiny, it just doesn't even matter. It's not something you should be focusing on. Remember, we started the show yesterday and we said, we are assuming that you do not have an endless amount of time to make money and help people, and you are then going to want to focus in on things that are going to get you paid the quickest. Well, hopefully you're understanding that long-term anything isn't going to do it.
Dripping is not good.
Dripping is not good, right? Now we're going to pick up tomorrow where we left off today. So today we talked about, what did we talk about today? Geographic farming.
Yes.
We did that today or
we
yesterday?
talked about open houses, and I think we talked about distress too. We
Yeah.
talked about it a lot today. Hope
We
you guys
did.
were taking notes.
Right. So again, you're choosing which spokes you're going to put on your wheel and which order you're going to put on them. We're giving you on your wheel, we're giving you the pluses and minuses of each of these lead generation methods. You have to decide. And again, it's not a one size fits all approach. When you sign up for our coaching, we're not just going to tell you to do this and tell you to do this. We're going to suggest that these are the orders in which you should be adding the spokes, because these are the things that are going to get you the most results the quickest. But we're also going to tell you how much effort it's going to take and if any expenditure is required. Mm-hmm. We're not focusing on specific little ideas. We're focusing on overarching business models that a lot of you guys are following. And we're going to start moving towards the more common ones, I think probably tomorrow, which is going to be your centers of influence and past clients, your by referral and things like that. So that's what we're going to lead into tomorrow on tomorrow's show. Thank you for continuing to make this the number one listen to daily podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. Please do subscribe if you're on YouTube. Please do like, or what do you do on iTunes? You know what? Give us a 5-star review on iTunes.
5-star review. There
Exactly.
You go. And become a coaching member. You know, we refer to all of these things like the open house system and some scripts. None of this is difficult, but you make it more difficult the longer you wait. So become a coaching client. Just text the word Premier to 47372 or simply go to premiercoaching.com so that we can see you immediately and strap some rocket boosters to your career and make things a lot easier for you.
And remember, when you text the word Premier to 47372 or you go to premiercoaching.com, you can join Premier Coaching for free. And yes, that does include a daily semi-private coaching call. You know this is something you should all be doing, so take action on this now. Remember, when texting, message and data rates may apply. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.